Close your eyes and take a deep breath. Let the tension in your shoulders soften. Feel the weight of your body sink gently into the comfort beneath you. With each breath, imagine traveling further back in time, away from the noise and hurry of the modern world. The air around you grows still, quiet, like the hushed moments before dawn in a forgotten age. If you enjoy slow, sleepy history, tap the like button, subscribe for more nighttime journeys, and share this with someone who needs rest tonight. Tell us in the comments, where are you listening from? What time is it? We'd love to know. Tonight, the past whispers, waiting to be gently discovered. As your mind begins to drift, allow yourself to be carried away to a time of stone towers and hand-sewn garments, of candlelight and distant church bells. The medieval world unfolds before you, not as a place of drama and excitement, but as a tapestry of quiet moments, everyday struggles, and the steady rhythm of lives so different from our own. Let us walk together through the mist of centuries and discover why you, with all your modern sensibilities and habits, wouldn't last a day in medieval times. The morning comes early in the medieval village, long before your modern body would ever wish to stir. No gentle alarm provides a 5-minute snooze. No coffee machine waits to brew your favorite dark roast. Instead, the roosters begin their call as the first hint of light touches the eastern sky. Their persistent crowing drifts through the thin walls of your humble dwelling. A small home with packed earth floors and a thatched roof that occasionally releases small bits of straw when the wind blows too firmly. You open your eyes to darkness, the kind of darkness modern people rarely experience. No streetlights cast their orange glow. No digital clocks illuminate the bedside. The darkness is complete, enveloping, ancient. Your bed is not the supportive mattress you're accustomed to, but a simple straw-filled pallet resting on wooden slats. A rough woolen blanket provides what warmth it can against the lingering cold of night that hangs in the air of your single-room home. The pillow beneath your head is a small sack stuffed with more straw or perhaps dried herbs if you're particularly fortunate. Your body aches in unfamiliar places. The mattress, such as it is, offers little support for your back. Your neck feels stiff from the awkward angle of your makeshift pillow. The muscles in your legs remind you of yesterday's labors. In the field, a level of physical exertion your modern body has never been asked to endure before. This is how every day begins in medieval times, with small discomforts that will only compound as the hours pass. The air inside your home carries the lingering scent of last night's cooking fire, a mixture of wood smoke and the memory of the simple pottage that served as your evening meal. The fire has long since died down to embers that glow faintly in the darkness. Your first task of the day will be to coax these embers back to life, for there are no matches in this world, no lighters, to instantly summon flame. The skill of nurturing fire is one modern people have long forgotten, yet here it is essential for survival. Beside you, perhaps, sleeps your spouse, and nearby on smaller pallets are your children, if you have them. Privacy is an unknown luxury in the medieval home. All family members share this single space, sleeping, eating, and living together in a proximity that would make modern individuals deeply uncomfortable. The concept of personal space does not exist in this world. Your movements as you rise must be careful, quiet, so as not to disturb those who might sleep a little longer. Your bare feet touch the packed earth floor, cool and unyielding. There are no slippers waiting beside your bed, no soft carpet to cushion your steps. In wealthier homes, floors might be strewn with rushes mixed with herbs to provide some softness and pleasant scent. But in the humble dwelling of a common person, luxury is absent. The earth is swept clean, but still, it is earth beneath your feet. a constant reminder of mankind's connection to the soil that provides sustenance. You move carefully in the darkness toward the hearth, guided by memory rather than sight. Your hands, softer and less calloused than they will soon become, reach for the iron poker to stir the embers. The metal feels cool to the touch, then warmer as you near the hearth's center. You kneel before the fireplace, a simple stone structure that serves as both the heart of your home and its only source of heat and cooking capability. Gently, with a patience unknown to the modern world of instant gratification, you stir the grey ashes until the hidden embers glow more brightly. You add a handful of straw or perhaps small twigs, carefully gathered and stored near the hearth for this very purpose. You blow softly, steadily, watching as the smallest spark of orange light begins to grow. This simple act of fire-making, this communion with one of nature's elements, requires a knowledge and skill set entirely foreign to your modern hands. As the flame catches and begins to grow, the interior of your home is gradually revealed in its dancing light. The walls are simple, perhaps wattle and daub, a weaving of sticks plastered with a mixture of clay, soil, animal dung and straw. In some regions, they might be stone instead, or logs stacked and sealed with moss and clay. Whatever the material, they offer minimal insulation against the elements. During winter months, the cold seeps through, creating a perpetual chill that never fully leaves the bones. The furnishings are sparse by any modern standard. A wooden table, handcrafted and showing the marks of its maker's tools. A few stools or benches rather than chairs with comfortable backs. A chest for storing the family's few possessions. Perhaps a loom stands in one corner if cloth is made. In this home, kitchen implements, simple pottery bowls, wooden spoons, a knife or two, an iron pot for cooking, hang near the fire or rest on crude shelves. There are no cabinets filled with gadgets, no specialized tools for every cooking task. With the fire slowly building, providing both light and gathering warmth, you must now attend to your first bodily needs of the day. There is no indoor plumbing, no private bathroom with running water. Instead, you reach for the chamber pot kept discreetly in a corner of the room. Or perhaps you step outside to the privy, a simple hole in the ground surrounded by a rough wooden structure that offers minimal privacy. The smell is unpleasant, a constant companion to medieval life that modern noses would find deeply offensive. There is no toilet paper, that simple luxury taken for granted in modern times. Instead, depending on your location and status, you might use moss, leaves, a handful of straw, or perhaps a cloth that will need to be washed. Handmade soap exists, but is considered a valuable commodity, not to be wasted on frequent hand washing. Your concept of hygiene, shaped by modern understandings of germ theory and disease prevention, has no place in this world. Now comes the matter of your morning ablutions. There is no shower with hot water pouring at the turn of a knob. No sink, with twin taps offering temperatures of your choosing. Instead, you pour water from a pitcher into a basin, water that was likely carried from a nearby well or stream the previous day and has sat overnight, taking on the cool temperature of the room. In winter, this water feels icy against your skin as you splash it on your face and hands. Teeth cleaning, if done at all, involves rubbing them with a cloth, perhaps with ashes or salt as an abrasive. The mint-fresh breath of modern toothpaste is replaced by the earthier taste of herbs you might chew to freshen your mouth. Many in the medieval world have already lost teeth by early adulthood, their gums receding, the pain of decay a common companion. The straight white smile considered essential in modern times is rare indeed in these earlier centuries. Your hair receives little attention compared to modern routines. While combs exist, made of bone, wood, or metal for the wealthy, shampooing is not a daily activity. Water is too precious, too difficult to heat in quantity, to waste on frequent hair washing. Instead, your hair would be covered. Women beneath wimples or veils, men under simple caps or hoods. These head coverings serve a practical purpose, keeping hair cleaner and free from the dust, smoke, and detritus of daily life. Now comes the matter of dressing. Your clothing does not await you in a closet, neatly hung or folded in drawers. The concept of extensive wardrobes belongs to the nobility alone. As a common person, you likely own perhaps 2 outfits, one for everyday wear, one slightly better, kept for holy days and special occasions. Your clothes from yesterday lie where you placed them before sleep, for there is no hamper for laundry, no washing machine to effortlessly clean soiled garments. The undergarment comes first, a simple linen shirt or shift that hangs to your knees or below. This is your primary layer, the only one regularly washed, serving to protect your outer clothes from direct contact with your skin and its natural oils and sweat. Over this, for a man, would come woolen hose, separate legs tied to a belt or to a doublet, nothing like the seamless pants of modern times. Women would add a kirtle or gown, many layers depending on the weather and their station. The fabrics against your skin feel rougher than anything in your modern wardrobe. The linen, while softened somewhat through wear and washing, lacks the silky smoothness of modern cotton blends. The wool of your outer garments varies in quality, but even the finest would feel itchy and heavy to your modern sensibilities. There are no synthetic fabrics, no stretch, no special moisture-wicking properties. Clothing serves its primary purpose: warmth, coverage, basic protection, without the comfort modern textiles provide. As you dress, you become aware of the specific smells of medieval life gathering around you. Your own body carries scents considered normal in this time, the natural odor of a human who bathes far less frequently than modern standards dictate. Your clothes hold the embedded smells of smoke, cooking, work, and previous wearings. The air in your home mingles these with the earthy smell of the floor and walls, the animals that might share your living space in harsher seasons, the stored foods hanging from rafters or kept in barrels. With the fire established and your body prepared for the day, thoughts turn to the first meal. Breakfast is not the elaborate meal known to modern times. There are no cereals with cold milk, no toast with butter and jam, no eggs cooked to preference alongside strips of bacon. For most common folk, breakfast might be simple indeed. Perhaps a piece of bread left from yesterday, maybe softened in ale if it has gone stale. If you are fortunate, you might have a bit of cheese or an onion to accompany it. You reach for a wooden bowl, one of the few dishes your household possesses. Each bowl is precious, handcrafted and meant to last for years. It bears the marks of countless meals, the wood darkened with use and time. There are no specialized breakfast dishes, no particular cups for different beverages. The simplicity of material possessions in the medieval world would strike a modern person as extreme poverty. Yet this is merely the normal state of existence. The morning drink is not coffee or tea, those luxuries still unknown or inaccessible to European commoners. Instead, you might have small beer or ale, brewed to be less alcoholic than its evening counterpart. Water, unless drawn from a known clean spring, is often suspect, carrying invisible threats of illness. Modern people are protected from through treatment facilities. The brewing process kills harmful bacteria, making ale a safer option for daily hydration than water from many sources. As you eat your simple breakfast, you plan the day ahead. There is no checking of email, no scrolling through social media, no morning news broadcast to inform you of world events. Your world is immediate, local, extending perhaps to the nearest market town, but rarely beyond. News travels at the speed of a person walking or riding a horse, meaning information is days, weeks, or months old by the time it reaches you, if it reaches you at all. Your work awaits, not in an air-conditioned office with ergonomic chairs, but in fields, workshops, or in the continuing labor of maintaining a household. For a man, this might mean heading to the fields with simple tools, a wooden plough perhaps pulled by an ox if you're fortunate enough to have one, or more likely a spade, a hoe, a sickle, a scythe. These tools, forged by the local blacksmith, are valuable possessions representing significant investment. Their wooden handles, smoothed by generations of hands before yours, feel substantial in a way modern plastic tools never do. For a woman, the day's work centers around the household, but is no less physically demanding. There is bread to bake, not from pre-ground flour purchased in a store, but often from grain you must grind yourself between stones. There is cleaning to be done without vacuum cleaners or surface sprays, washing without machines, cooking without measuring cups or thermostats. Water for each task must be carried from its source. Heating it requires feeding the fire with precious fuel gathered and stored with great effort. Children as young as 7 are already integrated into this working life, assigned tasks appropriate to their age and strength. There is no concept of childhood as a protected time of play and education as modern societies understand it. Learning happens through observation and participation in the work of survival, the passing down of essential skills from parent to child, generation after generation. As you step outside to begin your workday, the sensory experience of the medieval village envelops you. The air carries multiple layers of scent, the smoke from cooking fires, the earthy smell of animals, and their waste used as valuable fertilizer, the yeasty aroma from the communal bakehouse, the sharp tang of the tanner's yard where hides are transformed into leather through processes that create noxious odors. The soundscape is entirely organic, devoid of engine noise, electronic beeps, or the constant background hum of electrical devices. Instead, you hear the calls of animals, chickens scratching in the dirt, pigs rooting in their pens, the occasional lowing of cattle. Human voices carry clearly, children playing or crying, women calling to one another, the rhythmic sounds of work. From a distance comes the regular tolling of the church bell, marking the hours of prayer that structure the medieval day. The visual landscape contains nothing of the reflective glass, smooth concrete, or gleaming metal that dominates modern environments. Instead, buildings of wood, stone, and thatch cluster together, their materials drawn directly from the surrounding landscape. Colors come from nature, the gray of stone, the brown of timber, the golden yellow of thatched roofs weathered by sun and rain. Clothing moves in muted shades of undyed wool, cream-colored linen, perhaps with rare splashes of color from plant-dyed fabric for those who can afford such niceties. The layout of the village itself reflects priorities entirely, different from modern urban planning. There are no straight streets arranged in grids, no zoning to separate residential areas from commercial or industrial ones. Instead, the village has grown organically over generations, houses clustered for protection, positioned to make best use of natural features like streams or slopes. Paths between dwellings are worn by feet rather than paved by machines, muddy in wet weather, dusty in dry spells. At the center, most likely, stands the church, the tallest and most substantial building in the community. Its stone walls and perhaps modest stained glass windows represent the greatest concentration of wealth and craftsmanship in the vicinity. The church is not merely a place of weekly worship, but the very heart of community life, the calendar of saints' days and religious observances providing structure to the year, the parish priest serving as religious leader, record keeper, and, often medical advisor. As you move through this environment, you become acutely aware of your body in ways modern life rarely demands. Each step requires navigating uneven ground. Each task involves direct physical effort without mechanical assistance. The weight of a water bucket, the resistance of soil to the plow, the heat of the cooking fire against your skin. Physical sensations form a constant, immediate relationship with the world around you. The concept of time itself feels different. Without clocks marking minutes and seconds, time flows according to nature's rhythms. The position of the sun, the changing light, the schedule of necessary tasks. The day is divided by the church bells ringing for canonical hours. Matins, lauds, prime, terce, sext, none, vespers, compline. Though, as a working person, you would not stop for each of these. Still, this gentle division of time creates a pace entirely different from the precise scheduling of modern life. Your work in the fields follows patterns established over centuries. In spring, there is ploughing and sowing, the preparation of soil, and careful distribution of precious seed that must be held back from last year's harvest. The act of sowing requires skill and knowledge. Too much seed wastes a valuable resource, too little reduces yield. Your modern hands, accustomed to precision tools and digital interfaces, must learn to scatter seed with an expertise that comes only through seasons of practice. The fields themselves are laid out in strips, a system evolved to ensure fair distribution of both better and poorer land among the community. Your strips may be scattered throughout the common fields, rather than consolidated in a single plot. This arrangement, while seeming inefficient to modern eyes, embodies medieval concepts of fairness and community interdependence. No one farms alone. The work is often communal, households joining together for the heaviest tasks. As the morning progresses, the physical demands of medieval labor become increasingly apparent to your modern body. There are no breaks with energy drinks or protein bars to restore your strength. No sports medicine has designed exercises to prevent the specific strains of agricultural work. The tools, while ingeniously designed for their purpose, lack ergonomic handles or weight distribution. They were made to get work done, not to minimize user discomfort. Your back begins to ache from the constant bending. Your hands, softer than those of your medieval counterparts, develop blisters that will eventually callous with time. Muscles unused to these specific movements protest with increasing insistence. Modern people are not unaccustomed to exercise, but the sustained, repetitive labor of medieval work taxes the body in ways entirely different from an hour at the gym or a weekend hiking trip. The sun climbs higher, and with it comes heat that cannot be escaped by stepping into air conditioning or seeking shelter in climate-controlled buildings. Your medieval garments, designed for modesty and protection rather than comfort, hold heat and sweat against your skin. The woolen layers that seemed merely heavy in the cool morning now become stifling as the day warms. There are no synthetic fabrics designed to wick moisture, no breathable materials engineered for comfort in heat. Thirst becomes a companion, more pressing than you're accustomed to with ready access to refrigerated beverages. The water you brought to the fields in a ceramic jug has warmed under the sun. No ice cubes or insulated containers to keep it cool. It tastes of the vessel that holds it, perhaps slightly earthy or mineral, so different from the purified, tasteless water dispensed from modern taps and bottles. Around midday comes the main meal of the medieval day. This is not lunch as modern people understand it, a quick sandwich or salad, perhaps eaten at a desk while continuing to work. Instead, this is dinner, the most substantial meal, taken when the sun is highest and the heat makes field work most difficult. You return to your home, or perhaps eat in the field, if the season demands constant attention to crops. The meal is simple but filling, designed to provide energy for the remainder of the day's labor. Pottage is common, a thick soup or stew of vegetables and grains simmered in the pot kept constantly over the fire. Into this base might go whatever is available: dried peas or beans in winter and early spring, fresh vegetables as the garden produces them, herbs for flavor, perhaps small amounts of salt if you can afford this precious preservative. Meat is rare except after slaughtering times or for special occasions. Bread accompanies almost every meal. A dense, chewy loaf, nothing like the soft, pre-sliced varieties of modern supermarkets. Dark and grainy, this bread contains the whole of the wheat, rye, or barley, including parts modern milling removes as too coarse. It requires substantial chewing, providing both nutrition and the satisfaction that comes from the physical act of eating something so substantive. You eat with your hands, or perhaps a wooden spoon. The concept of individual place settings with multiple specialized utensils entirely foreign to all but the nobility. The bowl from which you eat might be wooden, turning dark from years of use, or perhaps simple earthenware if you're slightly more prosperous. There are no plates as modern diners would recognize them, no separate dishes for different foods. The pottage contains everything together, flavors blending rather than being kept distinct. After eating, there might be a brief rest during the hottest part of the day, particularly in summer, though this respite is born of necessity rather than leisure as modern people understand it. The medieval workday follows the sun, not the clock, adjusting to seasons and weather rather than maintaining the same schedule year-round, regardless of natural conditions. Work resumes in the afternoon, continuing the same physical tasks, or perhaps shifting to different ones as the day's needs dictate. There is always more to be done than time or strength allows. Fields to tend, animals to care for, household tasks to complete, preparations to make for coming seasons. The medieval relationship with work is not one of defined hours followed by clear leisure time, but rather a constant flow of necessary tasks, punctuated by brief periods of rest and community gathering. As the day begins to wane, your modern body feels the accumulated effects of physical labor in a way your medieval counterparts, conditioned to this life from childhood, might not. Every muscle aches with an intensity gym workouts have never produced. Your hands, even if you consider them relatively tough by modern standards, are raw from friction against tool handles. Your lower back sends sharp reminders of movements. It was never trained to perform repeatedly, yet the work cannot stop simply because of discomfort. The crops won't wait. Animals need tending regardless of how the farmer feels. Household tasks must be completed for the family to eat and sleep in relative comfort. The medieval relationship with physical pain is necessarily different from modern. Expectations, minor injuries, chronic aches, the wearing of joints. These are not exceptional circumstances requiring medical intervention, but the expected condition of a body that works to survive. As the medieval day draws to a close, let us drift through the gathering dusk to explore another aspect of this distant world. The mists of time swirl around us, carrying us to where hands shape raw materials with ancient skill, where crafts forgotten by our modern world still flourish in the quiet workshops of medieval artisans. The workshop of the medieval artisan breathes with a rhythm entirely its own, a pulse that has remained largely unchanged for centuries. Morning light filters through small windows, perhaps covered with oiled parchment rather than glass, which remains a luxury few can afford. The side illumination is gentle, diffuse, creating pools of soft light rather than the harsh, even brightness of modern electric bulbs. In this gentle ambience, the craftsperson begins another day of creation, hands continuing work that connects them to countless generations before. The space itself speaks of permanence in a way modern workplaces rarely do. The wooden workbench, central to almost any craft, bears the marks of decades or even centuries of use. Its surface is uneven, darkened with oils from countless hands, dented and scarred from tools dropped, materials shaped, mistakes made and corrected. Unlike the smooth, uniform surfaces of modern workshops, this bench tells the history of its use. Each mark a record of something created, something learned. Tools hang from walls or rest in careful arrangements within reach of the artisan's practiced hands. These are not mass-produced implements with plastic handles and machine-finished metal, but unique pieces, often made by the craftsperson themselves or by other specialists like the blacksmith. Each has been shaped through use, handles worn to fit specific hands, metal parts maintained through constant care, sharpening, oiling, adjusting. Some tools have been inherited from masters or parents, carrying with them not just function, but memory and obligation. The materials waiting to be transformed surround the artisan. Wood in carefully stacked planks dried over seasons, leather in various stages of preparation, wool or flax for the weaver, metal ingots for the smith, clay for the potter. These raw materials connect the workshop directly to the natural world in ways modern manufacturing has largely forgotten. The wood comes from specific trees that grew in known locations. The wool was shorn from sheep that grazed nearby fields. The clay was dug from particular banks, where its quality was understood through generations of use. Consider the carpenter, whose work touches almost every aspect of medieval life, from cradles to coffins, from simple stools to complex roof trusses. The shaping of wood provides the physical framework for existence. The carpenter's day begins with assessment, running hands over materials, feeling for moisture content, checking grain patterns, making decisions about which piece will serve which purpose. This intimate knowledge of material comes not from books or instructional videos, but from years of observation and practice. The tools of the woodworker are extensions of the body rather than replacements for its capabilities. The draw knife pulls toward the craftsperson, allowing the body's own senses to gauge thickness and smoothness. The handplane pushes away, its wooden body warming with use, the shavings curling away in satisfying ribbons, whose thickness tells an experienced hand everything about the quality of the cut. The saw requires the full attention of eyes and muscles working in concert, maintaining straightness through skill rather than mechanical guides. What strikes a modern observer immediately is the absence of power tools, those noisy shortcuts to results that characterize contemporary woodworking. There is no electric hum, no whine of motors, no dust collection system roaring in the background. Instead, the workshop is filled with organic sounds, the rhythmic scrape of the plane, the measured pace of the saw's teeth, the tap of the mallet against chisel, the maker's own breathing synchronized with effort. It is a quieter making, allowing for thought, even meditation within the work itself. The carpenter's relationship to time differs fundamentally from modern expectations. A joint might take hours to cut by hand, fitting tenon to mortise with incremental adjustments, testing and retesting the fit. A modern machine would complete the same task in minutes, yet the medieval craftsperson doesn't experience this as inefficiency or wasted time. The making is the point, not merely the result. The slowness of the process allows for continuous assessment and adjustment, for the development of solutions unique to each piece's particular characteristics. Across the village, the blacksmith's forge presents a different sensory world, though one equally removed from modern experience. Here, fire is both tool and partner. its temperament as important to understand as the properties of the metal it transforms. The smith begins early, lighting the forge with care, building the fire to the precise heat needed for the day's work. Coal or charcoal glows orange and white, the color indicating temperature to experienced eyes, in a way no digital thermometer could improve upon. Heat radiates throughout the smithy, inescapable and essential. Modern people, accustomed to climate control that maintains constant, comfortable temperatures regardless of the work being done, would find the extremity of the forge's heat nearly unbearable. Yet the smith works within this element daily. Body, adapted to the intensity, movements choreographed to minimize exposure while maximizing effect. Sweat pours freely, not as an inconvenience, but as the body's natural response to conditions, as much a part of the work as the hammer or anvil. The rhythmic striking of hammer on metal creates the backbeat of the smith's day. This percussion is not random, but precisely controlled, each blow delivered with specific force to a specific point at a specific angle. The hammer becomes an extension of the arm, its weight anticipated and incorporated into the body's movement. Modern people, rarely called upon to use tools with such precision over extended periods, would find their arms burning with exhaustion long before the smith shows any sign of tiring. The smith's knowledge is embodied rather than theoretical. While modern metalworking might begin with calculated formulas for alloys and temperatures, the medieval craftsperson knows by sight when metal has reached the proper heat for working, by sound when a striking rhythm is correct, by feel when metal is properly tempered. This knowledge lives in the senses, impossible to fully capture in writing, passed from master to apprentice through years of guided practice. In another part of the village or town, the weaver's workshop presents a different kind of making. One, based on intersection and accumulation, rather than subtraction or transformation. The loom, often the largest piece of equipment in a modest home, stands as a frame for creation. Its wooden beams, worn smooth through years of use, hold the warp threads in precise tension, creating the foundation upon which the weft will build fabric thread by thread, row by row. The physicality of weaving engages the entire body in ways modern textile production has engineered away. Feet press treadles to separate alternate warp threads, creating a shed through which the shuttle passes. Arms extend fully to pass this shuttle from one side to another. The beater is pulled toward the body with measured force, compacting each new line of weft into the growing fabric. Back, shoulders, arms, and legs work in coordinated rhythm, a dance with the loom that produces cloth literally through embodied knowledge. Before the weaving even begins, hours, days, or weeks of preparation have already occurred. Wool has been washed, carded, spun into yarn. Flax has been retted, broken, scutched, hackled, and spun into linen thread. Perhaps plants have been gathered, prepared, and used to dye some of these threads in colors that modern chemical dyes might find difficult to replicate: the deep blue of woad, the rich red of madder root, the warm yellow of weld. Each of these preparatory processes is itself a craft requiring specific knowledge and practiced skill. The complexity of seemingly simple objects becomes apparent through witnessing their creation. A woolen cloak, that basic garment taken for granted in medieval life, represents sheep raising, shearing, cleaning wool, carding, spinning, dyeing, weaving, fulling, cutting, and sewing. Each step requires specialized knowledge and tools, often involving different craftspeople working in coordination. The modern ability to purchase a finished garment with the click of a button obscures this density of human effort and knowledge. Near the edge of the settlement, where water access is good, but the smell won't overwhelm residents, The tanner works with materials most modern people would find repulsive. Fresh hides, still carrying the evidence of their animal origins, are stretched and scraped to remove remaining flesh and fat. The smell is powerful, organic, unavoidable. The tanner's hands are stained from the materials used in the tanning process, perhaps oak bark made into solution, or alum, or even urine and dung, all substances proved effective through centuries of practice. This is craft that modern sensibilities have sanitized away, removing workers from direct contact with the organic origins of materials. The medieval tanner cannot distance themselves from the reality that leather comes from living creatures. Their hands touch every stage of transformation from animal skin to useful material. The senses are fully engaged. The smell of the tanning, solutions, the feel of the hide changing as it transforms, the sight of color developing, the sound of the scraping tools against increasingly taut surfaces. In the center of the village or town, the baker's craft might seem more familiar to modern eyes. Yet even here, the differences in process reveal how thoroughly technology has changed our relationship to making. The medieval baker knows their oven as a living entity with moods and patterns. Built of brick or stone, the communal bread oven is heated by burning wood directly inside it. When the proper temperature is reached, judged by the color of the interior rather than by thermometer, the embers are raked out, the floor cleaned, and the loaves inserted using long-handled wooden peels. The bread itself begins differently. Rather than commercial yeast, a portion of dough saved from the previous baking serves as starter, carrying a community of microorganisms that give the local bread its distinctive flavor. The flour comes from the miller, ground between stones, that impart their mineral character to the result. Mixing and kneading is done by hand. The bakers experience touch, gauging hydration and gluten development without measuring cups or timers. The entire process engages body knowledge in ways modern bread making, with its precise measurements and controlled environments, has largely engineered away. Throughout the settlement, craftspeople of all types work with materials in direct, unmediated ways. The potter feels clay between their fingers, understanding its moisture content and plasticity through touch. The candlemaker smells the rendering tallow, knowing by scent when it has reached the proper state for pouring. The bookbinder hears the specific sound of properly prepared parchment as they turn the pages. These sensory relationships with materials build knowledge that exists below the level of verbal instruction, embodied understanding that comes only through practice. Apprenticeship is the way this knowledge passes through generations. The young apprentice lives with the master craftsperson, often for 7 years or more, learning not just techniques but an entire way of seeing and understanding materials. The relationship is more encompassing than modern education, involving not just the transmission of skills, but the formation of identity. The apprentice becomes a craftsperson through a gradual embodiment of knowledge that transforms their relationship to materials and making. This system means that innovation happens differently than in the modern world. Changes come incrementally, through small adjustments to traditional methods rather than through disruptive technologies. A slightly modified tool, a new technique for a particular process, a different material combination. These modest innovations accumulate over generations, allowing crafts to evolve while maintaining their essential character. There is deep conservatism in this approach, a respect for proven methods, but also space for individual creativity within traditional frameworks. The craftsperson's relationship with their creations extends beyond the moment of completion. In a world where mass production does not exist, objects are made to last, to be repaired rather than replaced. The chair crafted by the woodworker might serve a family for generations, receiving new seats when the original wears through, new spindles when one breaks, evolving through use and repair while maintaining its essential identity. This durability reflects an economy of materials and effort unrecognizable to modern consumers accustomed to disposability. For the medieval artisan, the quality of their work is inseparable from their identity within the community. The blacksmith, whose tools break, the weaver whose cloth unravels, the cooper whose barrels leak. These craftspeople cannot hide behind corporate anonymity or offshore production. Their reputation lives in every object they create, visible to all who use it, discussed amongst neighbors and potential customers. Excellence is incentivized not just by profit, but by the social standing that comes with recognized skill. Much of this craft knowledge would be lost in the coming centuries, as industrialization separated making from makers, as machines replaced hands, as production moved from visible workshops to distant factories. The intimate relationship between craftsperson and material, the embodied knowledge developed through years of direct sensory engagement, the social context of making within community, these elements of medieval craft practice would become increasingly rare, preserved only in pockets of traditional artisanship or reimagined through modern craft revivals. Even the vocabulary of making would change. Medieval craftspeople used specific terms for tools and techniques. Words evolved over centuries to capture precise actions and objects. The woodworker knows the difference between a foreplane and a smoothing plane, between riving and sawing, between a muntin and a mullion. This specificity of language reflects the specificity of knowledge, the detailed understanding of processes and materials that comes through direct, repeated engagement. As the day progresses, the artisan's body registers the work in ways both challenging and satisfying. There is fatigue, certainly. Standing for hours at the loom, repeatedly lifting the blacksmith's hammer, bending over detailed leatherwork. Modern bodies, accustomed to more varied movement and frequent rest, would protest these sustained repetitive actions with pain and stiffness. Yet there is also a rhythm to the work that modern fragmented attention rarely allows. A flow state achieved through continuous engagement with material. Around midday, work pauses for the main meal, similar to the one described earlier. The craftsperson might eat in their workshop or return home if it's separate. Food is simple, designed to provide energy for the afternoon's continuation, rather than to serve as a culinary experience in itself. There is no scrolling through phones while eating, no catching up on news or social media. Conversation with family or apprentices might occur, or perhaps the meal is taken in contemplative silence, a brief rest for both body and mind. The afternoon sees work resume, perhaps with a different aspect of the craft. The morning's shaping might give way to afternoon assembly, or the preparation of materials might shift to their application. The changing light through small windows creates a natural timeline, the craftsperson adjusting tasks to take advantage of brighter or dimmer conditions. Detailed work requiring clear vision happens when light is best, while tasks that depend more on touch or muscle memory can continue into the fading afternoon. In many medieval workshops, the boundaries between domestic life and craft production blur in ways modern work-church life separation would find foreign. The weaver's children might help with carding wool or winding bobbins. The potter's spouse might prepare clay while tending to cooking. Infants sleep in cradles within earshot of the workbench, their rhythms incorporated into the day's making. Work and family life exist not as competing demands requiring balance, but as integrated aspects of a unified household economy. This integration extends to the training of the next generation. Children observe work from their earliest days, absorbing the patterns and processes of craft before any formal instruction begins. When old enough, they are given simple tasks, gradually increasing in complexity as their skills develop. By the time a child reaches the age for formal apprenticeship, Whether in their family's craft or another, they already possess basic understandings of tools, materials, and making that modern children, separated from sites of production, rarely develop. The organization of craft production itself differs fundamentally from modern economic structures. In many medieval towns, craftspeople of similar trades cluster together in specific streets or neighborhoods. Baker Street, Tanner's Alley, Weaver's Row. This proximity allows for sharing of resources, knowledge exchange, quality control through peer observation, and collective bargaining for materials or with customers. It creates communities of practice where craft knowledge can be preserved and evolved collectively. In larger towns, these craft communities formalize into guilds, organizations that regulate training, maintain standards, control entry to professions, and provide social support for members and their families. The guild structure offers protections unknown in modern gig economies or right-to-work environments, ensuring fair compensation, preventing undercutting by untrained practitioners, providing for members in illness or old age, supporting widows and orphans of deceased craftspeople. Membership in a guild confers not just economic opportunity, but social identity and community standing. As evening approaches, work continues until fading light makes it impractical. Unlike modern workplaces with their fixed hours regardless of season, the medieval workshop follows natural rhythms, extending work longer in summer months when daylight permits, shortening the workday during winter's early dusk. Candles and oil lamps exist, but are expensive. Their light less adequate for detailed work than sunlight. Their use is reserved for urgent projects or special circumstances, rather than being the standard means of extending the workday. The transition from work to evening brings its own rituals of closure. Tools are cleaned and returned to their places, a practice both practical and reverent. Materials are stored appropriately, clay covered to prevent drying, thread protected from dust, metal oiled against rust. The workshop is swept, scraps gathered for reuse or disposal. This care for tools and materials reflects their value in an economy where replacements are neither cheap nor quickly obtained, but it also demonstrates respect for the craft itself, for the means through which livelihood and identity are created. The medieval craftsperson ends their day with physical tiredness, but also with tangible evidence of accomplishment. Perhaps a joint has been completed, a length of cloth finished, a pot ready for firing, a metal piece shaped according to commission. Unlike modern knowledge work with its often intangible outputs and endless digital tasks, craft production provides concrete markers of progress. The day's effort is visible, touchable, an incremental advance in the creation of objects that will serve real needs in the community. As daylight fades, the artisan's hands might seek small tasks that can be done with less visual precision, sorting materials, performing simple maintenance on tools, preparing elements for tomorrow's work. These activities allow productivity to continue even as light diminishes, extending useful work through the transition to evening's rest. They also provide a gentler conclusion to the day's labor, a gradual easing from intensive focus to relaxation. Evening meals tend to be lighter than the midday dinner, perhaps bread, cheese, and vegetables in summer when fresh produce is available, or bread and soup during winter months. Food is eaten by firelight or candle, creating a warm intimacy among household members. Conversation might turn to the day's work, to community matters, to plans for coming projects or events. There is no television to watch, no internet to browse. Human interaction and storytelling provide the evening's entertainment. For the craftsperson, this time might include discussion of commissions, design problems encountered during the day, or planning for upcoming work. Apprentices receive instruction less through formal lessons than through these conversations. absorbing not just techniques, but ways of thinking about craft challenges, customer relations, material sourcing, and the economics of production. The master's experience becomes accessible through stories of past projects, problems solved, and mistakes made, creating a rich oral tradition of craft knowledge. Before sleep, there might be time for small pleasures, perhaps music played on simple instruments, stories told or read from precious books for those fortunate enough to be literate, games played with family members or neighbors. These entertainments are participatory rather than passive, requiring engagement rather than consumption. They strengthen community bonds, pass cultural knowledge between generations, and provide creative outlet after days of structured work. As the craftsperson prepares for sleep, their body carries the evidence of the day's labor, perhaps calluses, thickened from tool use, small cuts or burns from materials handled, muscles tired from repetitive action. These physical marks are not seen as injuries in the modern sense, but as the natural consequence of productive work, even badges of professional identity. The weaver's hands tell a different story from the blacksmith's, the potter's from the carpenter's, each craft writing its particular history on the bodies of its practitioners. The sleep that follows differs from modern patterns in its timing and quality. Without artificial light extending activity long past sunset, medieval people typically sleep earlier than their modern counterparts. Research suggests they might have practiced segmented sleep, a first period of several hours, then an hour or so of quiet wakefulness used for contemplation, intimate conversation, or prayer, followed by a second sleep period until dawn. This pattern, synchronized with natural darkness, creates a different relationship with night than the extended illuminated evenings of the contemporary world. Throughout this daily cycle, what becomes most apparent is the integration of life and work, body and craft. The medieval artisan does not separate their occupation from their identity, their working hours from their living. Making is not just what they do, but who they are within the community. The baker, the smith, the weaver, the carpenter. Their knowledge lives not primarily in books or digital repositories, but in their hands, eyes, and embodied experience, passed through direct demonstration and guided practice to the next generation. This integration extends to the products themselves. The medieval craftsperson creates objects for known customers, specific uses, particular contexts. The chair is made for a certain household, the barrel for a specific merchant, the cloth to become garments for identified wearers. This direct relationship between maker and user infuses objects with meaning beyond function, connecting people through material culture in ways mass production rarely achieves. The wooden spoon carries not just food, but the mark of its maker's hand, a tangible connection between craftsperson and user. Modern visitors to this world of medieval craft would find themselves alienated not just by the unfamiliar tools and techniques, but by this fundamentally different relationship to making and materials. Accustomed to the role of consumer, selecting from pre-made options produced by unknown hands in distant factories, the contemporary person might initially see only the limitations of medieval craft, the slower production, the lack of standardization, the absence of modern conveniences. Yet they might, with time, come to recognize what has been lost in the transition to industrial and post-industrial production. The deep material knowledge, the integration of mind and hand, the direct relationship between maker and user, the embeddedness of craft within community. The medieval artisan's world offers a glimpse of making as it existed for most of human history, before the relatively recent separation of design from production, thinking from making, consumer from creator. This is not to romanticize the difficulties of medieval craft life. the physical strain, the economic uncertainties, the limitations of materials and techniques. Nor is it to suggest that modern production has not brought genuine benefits in accessibility, affordability, and innovation. Rather, it is to recognize that each system of making creates particular relationships between people, materials, and knowledge, each with its own values and limitations. As darkness settles fully over the medieval workshop, tools and materials rest in readiness for tomorrow's continuation. The craftsperson sleeps, perhaps dreaming of forms taking shape beneath their hands, of problems solved and beauty created. When morning comes, they will rise to begin again, adding another day's work to the accumulated knowledge of their craft, participating in traditions that stretch backward through generations and forward into futures they cannot imagine, where their handmade objects might survive as witnesses to a different way of making and knowing the material world. As the craftsperson's candle dims and night embraces the medieval village, let us turn our gaze to stone and timber rising against the sky. The castle stands as a world unto itself, a place where life follows different rhythms, where power and protection shape daily existence in ways both subtle and profound. The castle rises from the landscape, not as a postcard image of romantic turrets, but as a practical assertion of power and protection. Its walls, thick and imposing, create a boundary between outside and inside that is both physical and symbolic. To modern eyes, accustomed to buildings designed primarily for comfort and convenience, the castle appears starkly functional, its form determined by defensive necessities rather than aesthetic preferences. Yet within this martial shell exists a complex community, a hierarchical society in microcosm, where people of various stations live and work in carefully ordered proximity. Dawn comes to the castle differently than to the village or town below. The high walls create patterns of shadow and light unique to this elevated space. The first rays touch the uppermost towers, while the bailey remains in darkness, a gradual illumination that mirrors the social hierarchy of the castle itself. Those of higher status, housed in the upper reaches, greet the morning light before those below. This daily solar progression embodies the medieval understanding of society as properly ordered from top to bottom, each person occupying their ordained place in a divine plan made visible in stone. The castle awakens according to station. In the great hall, where lower servants have slept on pallets near the cold hearths, movement begins earliest. Young boys and girls, some barely 9 or 10 years old, rise in near darkness to begin the day's most basic tasks. They rebuild fires, sweep floors, empty chamber pots, and prepare the space for the day's activities. Their movements are practiced, efficient, guided by the knowledge that their work must be well underway before their betters rise. These children, often sent from peasant families to serve in the castle, occupy the lowest tier of the household hierarchy. In the kitchen areas, work begins almost as early. The cooking of bread must start before dawn if it is to be ready for breaking fast. Great logs are added to the kitchen fires that may have been kept banked overnight, rather than allowed to die completely, for the effort of relighting represents valuable time and resources lost. The kitchen staff, cooks, assistant cooks, scullery workers, move with practiced coordination through spaces designed for functionality rather than comfort. Heat builds quickly in these areas, creating working conditions that modern occupational standards would deem intolerable, especially in summer months. Above, in chambers allocated according to status, the castle's noble residents and their personal servants begin to stir as light strengthens. A lady's waiting woman might rise first to prepare her mistress's clothing and wash water. A squire attends to his knight's armor and weapons before helping him dress. These personal servants occupy a status above the general household staff, their proximity to their masters or mistresses conferring privilege and responsibility. They are often better dressed, better fed, and entrusted with greater confidence than those who serve the household more generally. The lord and lady of the castle typically rise with the established day, not with first light like their servants, nor with personal preference as modern people might. Their movements through waking, washing, dressing, and breaking fast follow patterns established by tradition and practical necessity. While they enjoy greater comfort than anyone else in the castle, better bedding, more privacy, higher quality, clothing, their morning routines remain simple by modern standards. A basin of water, perhaps warmed if the season requires it, serves for washing. Clothing is selected not from extensive wardrobes, but from limited options appropriate to the day's activities and season. Breakfast within the castle varies dramatically by status. The lord and lady might enjoy white bread, perhaps with honey, cheese, or preserved fruits. Wine watered for morning consumption, or ale might accompany this light meal. Those of lesser status receive bread of decreasing quality as one moves down the social scale, from white bread for gentlefolk to dark, coarse bread for servants. The lowest members of the household make do with whatever remains from the previous day, often softened in ale or broth to make it more palatable. The castle's daily schedule revolves around the practical requirements of security, sustenance, and administration, overlaid with the rhythms of religious observance. Prayers punctuate the day, from morning devotions to evening compline. For the devout lord or lady, attendance at multiple prayer offices throughout the day structures time, in a way modern secular schedules would find disruptive. Yet this integration of spiritual and temporal activity reflects the medieval understanding of the world as fundamentally orderly, with divine and earthly hierarchies mirroring one another. Throughout the castle, work unfolds according to clearly understood roles. The constable, responsible for the castle's military function, organizes guard rotations, oversees the maintenance of defenses, and ensures readiness for potential threats. The steward manages the domestic operations, from the allocation of spaces to the supervision of food supplies and the assignment of household tasks. The chamberlain oversees financial matters, keeping accounts of expenditures and incomes, managing payments to staff and suppliers. Each office comes with specific responsibilities, privileges, and relationships to other positions within the complex social organism that is the castle household. For the lord, days often center around administration and justice. From his solar or chamber, he receives reports from estate managers, adjudicates disputes among tenants, reviews accounts, and makes decisions that impact the lives and livelihoods of all within his domain. These activities require literacy and numeracy that would become more common in later centuries, but remain specialized skills in the medieval period. The lord might rely on clerics or educated servants to read documents, maintain records, and draft correspondence, though increasingly noble education includes these abilities. The lady's domain, while separate from her husband's in many regards, is no less essential to the functioning of the castle. She oversees the household management, food provisions, textile production, herbal preparations for both culinary and medicinal purposes, the supervision of female servants. Her authority within these spheres is substantial. Her knowledge, often representing the accumulation of practical wisdom passed through generations of women. Far from the passive decorative figure of romantic imagination, the medieval lady functions as administrator, healer, producer, and maintainer of essential resources. Children within the castle grow up in circumstances determined by their status. Noble children receive education appropriate to their future roles. Boys training in the martial arts alongside academic subjects if they are to be knights. Girls learning household management, medicinal knowledge, textile arts, and often reading and music. By modern standards, childhood ends early, with boys of noble birth often sent to other households as pages around age 7. Girls prepared for marriage from early adolescence. The concept of childhood as a protected time of play and gradual learning exists differently in the medieval context, with young people integrated into adult activities from an early age. For children of servants or those sent to the castle for training from tenant families, childhood merges nearly seamlessly with work. They learn through doing, assigned tasks appropriate to their strength and ability, gradually taking on more responsibility as they grow. A kitchen boy might begin by turning spits or carrying water, eventually advancing to more skilled cooking tasks. A chambermaid starts with the simplest cleaning duties before learning the more complex aspects of household maintenance. This practical education prepares them for adult roles without the sharp transition modern young people often experience between education and work. The spaces of the castle itself shape and reflect the social order. The Great Hall serves as the communal center where meals are taken, business conducted, entertainment provided, and hospitality offered. Here, the entire household might gather, though strictly arranged according to status. The high table on a dais for the lord, lady, and honored guests. Lower tables for household knights and officials. Simpler arrangements for servants. Even in this shared space, physical positioning reinforces social distinction. The further from the high table, the lower one's status, a geography of hierarchy made visible at every meal. More private spaces are allocated according to rank and function. The lord and lady enjoy chambers removed from the public areas, often in the upper levels with better light, ventilation, and security. These rooms, while simple by modern standards, offer luxuries unavailable to most. Glazed windows perhaps, tapestries for insulation and decoration, furniture crafted specifically for comfort and status display. A bed with curtains provides warmth and privacy, a significant improvement over the open sleeping arrangements of the Great Hall. The castle's defensive architecture creates particular conditions of light, sound, and climate that modern people would find challenging. Arrow loops and narrow windows, designed to prevent enemy entry while allowing defensive fire, admit minimal natural light. Interior spaces, especially in the lower levels, remain dim even at midday, requiring candles or oil lamps for ordinary activities. These artificial light sources provide illumination that modern eyes, accustomed to the brightness and consistency of electric lighting, would find woefully inadequate for reading, detailed handwork, or complex tasks. Sound travels through the castle in distinctive ways. Stone walls and passages create echoes, carrying voices and activities from one space to another in sometimes unpredictable patterns. Privacy in conversation requires awareness of these acoustic properties, with truly confidential discussions held in carefully chosen locations or conducted in lowered voices. The ambient soundscape includes the constant low-level noise of many people working, the clatter of kitchen implements, the sweep of brooms on stone floors, the movement of goods and materials through passageways, the calls between servants, coordinating their tasks. The castle's thermal environment follows seasonal extremes with minimal moderation. In winter, stone walls radiate cold, drawing heat from bodies and creating a perpetual chill that even roaring fires in great hearths cannot fully dispel. Those of higher status claim places nearest to heat sources, while servants and lower ranking household members endure greater cold. Summer brings the opposite problem. Stone that has absorbed the sun's heat through long days releases it slowly through the night, creating stifling conditions in enclosed spaces. Modern temperature control is entirely absent, requiring behavioral adaptations through clothing, activity levels, and strategic use of available cooling methods, like circulating air through open shutters. Midday sees the castle at its fullest. Activity. The main meal of the day, dinner, requires extensive preparation and coordination. Food comes from multiple sources. The castle gardens provide vegetables and herbs. Estate farms supply grain and livestock. Hunting in adjacent forests yields game. Nearby streams or the sea offer fish. The transformation of these raw materials into meals worthy of the Lord's table involves numerous hands and specialized knowledge. Cooking methods differ from modern techniques, with greater reliance on boiling, spit roasting, and baking in communal ovens. Spices, for those who can afford them, mask the natural flavors modern diners are taught to appreciate and help preserve foods in an era before refrigeration. The presentation of food follows strict protocols that reflect social hierarchy. The best portions go to the high table, with quality and quantity diminishing as one moves down the social scale. Certain foods are considered appropriate only for noble consumption: the finest white bread, particular cuts of meat, expensive imported items like citrus or spices. Servants might receive adequate nutrition in terms of calories, but lack the variety and quality available to their betters. This differential access to food types is considered entirely natural, part of the divinely ordained social order, rather than an inequality to be questioned. Mealtime etiquette emphasizes shared resources used according to rank. Diners often eat in pairs, sharing a trencher, a thick slice of bread or wood platter, and a cup. Fingers are the primary eating utensils, with personal knives used for cutting. The concept of the individual place setting with multiple specialized implements lies centuries in the future. Instead, careful hand washing before eating and observation of proper techniques for taking food demonstrates civilized behavior. Higher status. Diners may have servants attending specifically to their needs, offering finger bowls, fresh napery, and the best portions of communal dishes. Conversation during meals follows its own conventions. Those at the high table might discuss matters of politics, estate management, or courtly interests, while lower tables maintain topics appropriate to their station. The modern concept of private conversation, accessible only to immediate table companions, doesn't apply in the Great Hall, where tables are arranged for communal dining rather than intimate groupings. Minstrels or other entertainers might perform during meals for notable occasions, providing music, recitations, or stories appropriate to the audience's status and interests. After the midday meal, activities diverge according to role and season. The Lord might retire briefly before attending to afternoon business, perhaps meeting with visitors, inspecting parts of the estate, or engaging in suitable leisure pursuits like hunting or hawking when time and weather permit. The lady continues household supervision, perhaps working with her gentlewomen on textile arts, embroidery, spinning, or weaving, while overseeing domestic operations. Servants clear the great hall, rearranging it for afternoon activities, then return to their specific duties throughout the castle. The afternoon brings changes to the castle's atmosphere. If the weather allows, many activities move outdoors: laundry drying in the sun, food preparation in courtyards to reduce indoor heat, training of young men in the martial arts in the yard, windows and shutters open to admit fresh air and additional light, creating movement through the otherwise still spaces of stone-walled rooms. The castle breathes differently in fair weather than foul, its habitability significantly improved when inhabitants can utilize both indoor and outdoor spaces freely. Sanitation presents challenges that modern visitors would find immediately apparent. The garderobe, the castle's toilet facilities, consists of small chambers built into the walls, with openings that drop waste directly down the exterior wall into moats or designated collection areas. While representing an improvement over complete absence of facilities, these garderobes offer minimal privacy and comfort, and their use in winter particularly tests physical endurance. The smell, while somewhat mitigated by their careful placement to take advantage of prevailing winds, remains noticeable, especially in warmer months or when cleaning is neglected. Personal hygiene follows different standards than modern expectations. Full-body bathing occurs infrequently, perhaps seasonally rather than daily or weekly. The effort required to heat sufficient water and transport it to bathing tubs makes the process labor-intensive and reserved for special occasions or medical necessity. Instead, regular cleanliness focuses on visible areas: hands, face, neck, washed with cold water or water warmed when status permits. Teeth cleaning involves rubbing with cloths or herbal preparations. Hair care relies on combing and covering rather than frequent washing. The castle's water supply requires careful management. Depending on design, water might come from wells, within the bailey, cisterns collecting rainwater, or channels diverting nearby streams. This water serves multiple purposes: drinking, cooking, minimal washing, and its purity varies considerably from modern standards. Beer and wine, consumed by all ages, provide safer hydration alternatives. In many cases, their alcohol content and production processes reducing harmful organisms. Water collection, storage, and distribution involve daily labor, much of it performed by the youngest or lowest status servants. As afternoon transitions to evening, the castle's rhythms shift again. Preparations for the evening meal begin, though this supper is typically lighter than the midday dinner. Work requiring good light concludes as natural illumination fades. Candles and oil lamps are lit sparingly, their expense reserving better lighting for higher status spaces and activities. The cost of artificial light in the medieval period, both in materials and fire risk, makes the natural cycle of daylight a far more significant regulator of activity than in the electrically illuminated modern world. Evening entertainments follow status and season. In winter, when darkness comes early, the household might gather in the Great Hall, where a substantial fire provides both warmth and light. Stories, music, games of chance or skill pass the hours before sleep. In noble households, reading might occupy those with the ability and access to precious books. Religious devotions continue, with evening prayers observed according to individual piety and household custom. These shared activities strengthen community bonds within the hierarchical structure, creating shared experiences across status lines while maintaining appropriate distinctions. As night fully descends, the castle transforms. Portions may be closed, oft to conserve heat and resources. Guards increase at vulnerable points, maintaining the castle's defensive purpose even during rest hours. The household retires in order of ascending status. Servants first, laying out pallets in the hall or retiring to designated quarters. Then household officers to their appointed chambers. Finally, the lord and lady to their private rooms. Darkness becomes nearly complete except for essential guard lights and banked fires, a level of nighttime darkness few modern people ever experience. Sleep arrangements reflect the same status distinctions that govern waking hours. The lord and lady enjoy a proper bed, raised from the floor with ropes or boards, supporting a mattress filled with straw, wool, or feathers depending on wealth. Curtains surrounding this bed provide both warmth and privacy. Higher servants might have simple bedsteads in shared chambers, while lower servants sleep on pallets in the hall or in workspace corners. The modern expectation of a private bedroom is unknown to all but the highest status individuals. Night brings its own sounds and rhythms to the castle. The guard changes are marked by quiet exchanges, the movement of men through stone passages, the subtle shift of weight as one watchful presence replaces another. Dogs settle in the hall, both companions and additional security. Occasionally a child cries, a sleeper coughs. The wind finds passage through arrow loops, creating low moans or whistles. The massive structure, so solid in daylight, reveals its subtle voice in darkness, creaking and settling as temperature changes, speaking in the language of stone and timber that its inhabitants understand as the normal soundtrack of night. Throughout these daily patterns, what becomes most apparent to modern observation is the integration of purpose that shapes castle life. Unlike contemporary buildings designed for single functions, residential, commercial, industrial, the castle serves simultaneously as military installation, administrative center, residence, production facility, and symbolic representation of authority. This integration creates a community unlike any in the modern world, where individuals of vastly different status live in enforced proximity, their lives interconnected through mutual necessity. The castle's physical structure itself embodies this integration, with spaces designed for multiple functions rather than specialized use. The Great Hall serves as dining room, court of justice, entertainment venue, sleeping area for lower servants, and occasional market during inclement weather. Courtyards accommodate military training, laundry drying, food preparation, animal keeping, and social gathering. This flexibility of space use represents both practical necessity and a different conception of privacy and specialization than modern architecture assumes. Security concerns influence every aspect of castle design and daily operation. The routines of opening and closing gates, maintaining watchfulness, controlling access to different areas, all remind inhabitants that the castle's primary purpose remains defense. Even in times of peace, these security measures continue, becoming ritual as much as practical protection, a constant acknowledgement that safety requires vigilance. Modern visitors, accustomed to buildings designed primarily for convenience and comfort rather than survival, would find this persistent awareness of threat an unfamiliar psychological backdrop to daily life. Social relationships within the castle follow carefully structured patterns that modern egalitarian assumptions would find challenging. Authority flows downward through clear chains of command, with each person knowing their place both above some and below others. This hierarchy is not merely organizational, but understood as reflecting the proper divine order of creation. 2. Question one's station is to question the foundation of medieval cosmology itself. Yet within this rigid framework, complex personal relationships develop. Loyalties, friendships, rivalries, even loves that sometimes transcend status boundaries while acknowledging their reality. The medieval castle household functions through interdependence more visible than in modern living arrangements. The lord depends on his servants for every aspect of daily comfort and function. Servants depend on the lord for protection, livelihood, and place within society. This mutual necessity creates bonds of obligation that, while asymmetrical in power, nonetheless connect individuals across social divides. Modern employment relationships, with their contractual nature and separation between work and home, offer a poor comparison to the totalizing belonging of castle household membership. Time itself moves differently within castle walls. Without mechanical clocks to divide hours into identical units, time flows according to changing light, scheduled activities, and the bells marking religious observances. Seasonal variations in daylight create entirely different daily rhythms. Throughout the year, with winter days contracted around the brief hours of light, summer expanded into long evenings of extended activity. This fluidity of time its expansion and contraction according to natural cycles rather than mechanical measurement, creates a relationship with temporality foreign to modern experience. Perhaps most striking to modern sensibilities would be the lack of privacy and solitude available to castle inhabitants. Even the lord and lady, with their private chambers, rarely experience complete solitude. Personal servants remain within call, often sleeping in the same chambers as their masters. Conversations are frequently overheard, actions observed, behaviors subject to collective awareness. The modern concept of privacy as a right or expectation simply doesn't exist in the same form. Instead, a different understanding prevails, that human life is properly communal, that isolation represents abnormality rather than desirable independence. Yet within these conditions, so foreign to modern preferences, medieval castle dwellers find richness in their existence. Relationships develop depth through constant proximity. Skills are honed through daily repetition and observation of masters. Knowledge passes directly from experienced practitioners to novices without intervening. Technologies or institutions, the sensory world, filled with the smells of cooking and herbs, the sounds of human activity and animal presence, the textures of handmade objects, the visual complexity of spaces shaped by use rather than design, offers stimulation fundamentally, different from modern environments optimized for convenience and control. As night deepens over the castle, its inhabitants sleep within walls that represent both protection and boundary, both community and hierarchy. The stone that separates them from the outside world also connects them to each other in relationships of duty, necessity, and belonging. Whatever the station of the sleeper, whether on a straw pallet in the hall or a curtained bed in the solar, each person holds a place in an order they understand as proper and permanent, a cosmic arrangement made visible in the very stones that shelter their sleep. Modern visitors, could they truly experience this medieval night, might find themselves dreaming of electric lights and private bathrooms, or perhaps, more unexpectedly, of a world where belonging is not a choice, but a certainty, where identity emerges not from individual preference, but from recognized place within an established order. As castle walls fade into the gentle darkness of our imagination, let us turn toward the broader rhythms that ordered medieval existence. The seasons flow one into another, bringing celebrations and hardships, feasts and fasts, the eternal cycle that measured life's passage in a world attuned to nature's patterns. The medieval year unfolds not as a linear progression of numbered days, but as a wheel turning through seasons, each bringing its distinctive labors, celebrations, dangers, and mercies. Modern people, living in climate-controlled environments with supermarket food available regardless of season, have largely forgotten the profound relationship with natural cycles that structured the medieval experience of time. For the medieval person, each season arrives not merely as a change in temperature or daylight, but as a complete transformation of daily life. Different work, different food, different prayers, different threats to survival. Winter settles over the medieval landscape with a stillness modern people rarely experience. After the frantic activity of autumn's harvest and preservation work, the shorter days and harsher weather impose a different rhythm. Fields lie fallow under frost or snow. The bare branches of trees trace dark patterns against grey skies, and the community turns inward. Indoor work becomes the focus. Spinning, weaving, woodworking, repair of tools and equipment, all those tasks set aside during the growing seasons when outdoor labor took precedence. The winter household centers, around the hearth, both practically for warmth and symbolically as the heart of family survival. Fire becomes even more precious than in warmer seasons. requiring careful management of fuel supplies. Wood and peat, gathered and stored during autumn, must last until spring. This economy of heating means most areas of even prosperous homes remain cold, with family activities concentrated in the single heated space. Medieval people accept this seasonal constriction of living area as natural, adapting their movements and expectations to winter's limitations. Cold penetrates medieval life in ways modern heating has eliminated. Stone floors radiate chill through the thickest shoes or boots. Walls, even in substantial buildings, allow drafts that create perpetual air movement, carrying away body heat. Water freezes in buckets overnight, requiring breaking of ice for morning washing. Breath forms visible clouds indoors as well as out. These physical experiences of winter shape not just comfort, but consciousness itself, creating a seasonal mind aware of cold as a presence, rather than merely an absence of warmth. Food in winter relies heavily on what has been preserved from more abundant seasons. The fresh vegetables and fruits of summer and autumn give way to their stored forms. Dried apples and pears, onions and garlic braided and hung from rafters, cabbages in barrels, root vegetables in cool storage. Grains provide the foundation of winter nutrition, transformed into bread, porridge, and ale. Meat, when available, comes increasingly from slaughtered animals rather than hunting, with preservation through smoking and salting creating flavors specific to winter dining. For those with sufficient resources, winter slaughtering provides a brief period of relative abundance. Animals that cannot be fed through the lean months, primarily pigs and older cattle or sheep unlikely to survive until spring, are killed after the first hard frosts when natural cold aids preservation. This creates a fleeting wealth of fresh meat before preservation methods transform it into longer-lasting but less succulent forms. The medieval palate knows this distinct seasonal progression from fresh winter meat to increasingly aged, preserved provisions as spring approaches. Winter imposes isolation that modern transportation and communication technologies have largely eliminated. Snow-filled roads, frozen rivers, and the simple challenge of traveling in cold weather reduce movement between communities. News travels more slowly or not at all. Visitors become rare. Each household, each village must rely more completely on its own resources and society. This turning inward creates both challenges of confinement and opportunities for community cohesion, as shared activities fill the longer evenings. These winter evenings bring distinctive forms of community gathering. With agricultural work suspended, more time becomes available for storytelling, music making, and crafts that can be done by firelight. Knowledge passes between generations in these darkened rooms. Tales that preserve community history and values. Songs that maintain cultural identity. Skills demonstrated hand to hand in the intimate proximity enforced by winter's chill. The modern separation between entertainment and education doesn't exist here. Winter evenings blend both in experiences that strengthen community bonds while passing essential information. Winter illness represents a threat medieval people understand differently than modern medical perspectives would suggest. Without germ theory to explain disease transmission, winter sickness is attributed to imbalance of humors, miasmatic air, or divine testing. Remedies blend practical herbal knowledge with religious observance and sympathetic magic. The elderly and very young face greatest risk during these cold months, when respiratory ailments spread through close-quartered communities and nutritional reserves diminish. Death seems closer in winter, its presence acknowledged in ways modern society tends to disguise, yet winter also brings moments of profound celebration that punctuate the season's hardship. The Christmas season, extending far longer than the modern holiday, creates a period of festivity, additional food, relaxed social rules, and religious observance that brightens the darkest days. Beginning with Advent's anticipation, continuing through Christmas itself and the 12 days following, extending to Candlemas in early February. This extended celebration provides both spiritual meaning and practical psychological support during winter's greatest challenges. The Feast of the Nativity itself represents far more than religious observance. It marks a moment of abundance during scarcity, when even humble households bring out stored treasures, perhaps better candles for illumination, spices normally reserved for special occasions, meats preserved specifically for this celebration. Churches shine with unusual numbers of candles, their light multiplied by the darkness they dispel. Music fills spaces normally quieter, special carols and liturgies creating sonic environments that contrast with everyday soundscapes. The 12 days of Christmas permit behaviors and celebrations normally constrained by practical necessity or social convention. Roles reverse temporarily during celebrations of the Feast of Fools, when lower status individuals assume mock authority. Games, dances, and communal activities occupy time usually devoted to work. Gift giving, while more modest than modern commercial, Christmas would suggest, creates bonds of obligation and appreciation that strengthen community networks essential for survival. These festivities acknowledge winter's challenge while defying its psychological dominance. As winter begins its slow retreat, the medieval community looks towards spring with complicated emotions. Food stores dwindle, creating the hungry gap, when last year's provisions diminish before new growth provides fresh nutrition. Bodies weakened by months of cold and relatively monotonous diet become more vulnerable to illness. Yet lengthening days bring promise, the first subtle signs of renewal visible to those whose survival depends on close observation of natural cycles. Certain birds return, particular plants show the earliest growth, light lingers slightly longer each evening. Small changes noted with significance impossible for modern people to fully comprehend. The transition from winter to spring brings mud season, a time when frozen ground thaws into mire that challenges movement and work. Roads become nearly impassable, fields too wet to plough, courtyards and pathways treacherous with slick clay. Modern people, accustomed to paved surfaces and weather-independent transportation, would find this seasonal limitation on movement profoundly restrictive. Medieval communities accept it as inevitable, adapting activities to these conditions with the same pragmatism they bring to all seasonal challenges. Religious observance provides structure for this transitional time through Lent, the 40 days of preparation for Easter. This period of increased prayer, fasting, and spiritual reflection coincides with the greatest food scarcity of the year, a practical alignment of spiritual and material conditions. The Lenten diet restrictions actually help conserve dwindling food supplies while providing religious meaning to necessary austerity. Daily and weekly religious services offer community gathering time when agricultural work has not yet resumed its full demands. Spring arrives not as a date on a calendar, but as a series of observable changes in the world. The medieval person reads these signs with attention. Modern people reserve for weather apps and forecasts. The first flowering of certain plants, the return of specific migratory birds, the behavior of local animals, the quality of rainfall, all provide information essential for timing the year's first agricultural activities. This knowledge passes between generations as practical wisdom, creating an accumulated expertise in local conditions far more specific than general seasonal markers. With true spring comes a surge of activity after winter's relative confinement. Fields must be ploughed and planted during optimal conditions that may last only days. Gardens require preparation, seeds sown, young plants tended against late frosts. Livestock give birth, requiring additional care and protection. Wild greens, the first fresh vegetables after months of preserved foods, must be gathered during their brief availability. The pace of work accelerates dramatically, extending daylight hours and demanding physical exertion that tests bodies, not yet fully recovered from winter's limitations. Spring brings hunger and hope intertwined. The last stores of grain may grow dangerously low, preserved meats dwindling to the less desirable portions, winter vegetables sprouting or rotting in storage. Yet the landscape begins providing foraged foods, young nettles, wild garlic, early berries, that offer both nutrition and variety. In Christianized Europe, this hungry time coincides with Easter celebrations that promise renewal in both spiritual and material realms. The egg, symbol of resurrection, represents both religious significance and practical return of this valuable protein source, as hens resume laying more prolifically with increased daylight. The medieval spring body experiences distinctive sensations as the world warms and work intensifies. Muscles unused during winter's more confined activities ache with renewed labor. Skin long covered for protection feels air and occasional sun with heightened sensitivity. Diet changes, the introduction of fresh greens, the different balance of available foods create internal adjustments, both pleasant and challenging. These embodied experiences of seasonal transition connect the medieval person to natural cycles in ways modern bodies, maintained in relatively consistent conditions, year-round, rarely encounter. Spring brings particular sounds that mark its progression. Birdsong increases and diversifies as migratory species return and mating begins. Livestock, especially newborn animals, create distinctive calls. Human activity generates different soundscapes. The metal of plows against soil, the calls of workers in fields, the increased movement between previously isolated communities as roads dry and travel resumes. Water sounds change as ice melts. Streams swell with snowmelt and spring rains. Mill wheels resume turning after winter freezes. This acoustic environment signals seasonal transition as clearly as visual changes. As spring advances towards summer, the growing season brings both relief and intensified labor. Planting different crops in proper sequence requires knowledge accumulated through generations and adapted to local conditions. Each geographical region, each microclimate, each soil type demands specific timing that books cannot fully capture. This embedded knowledge passes through direct observation and guided experience, creating a relationship with land that modern agricultural science approaches differently. The medieval farmer reads soil by sight, smell, and touch, gauging readiness for particular crops through sensory information rather than chemical testing. Religious celebrations continue to mark the season's progression, blending Christian observance with older recognitions of natural cycles. Rogation days in late spring include processions around parish boundaries, blessing fields and crops, combining practical community knowledge of land borders with spiritual protection for growing food. May celebrations, often incorporating pre-Christian fertility symbolism adapted to Christian contexts, acknowledge the crucial importance of renewed growth. These observances integrate spiritual and material concerns in ways modern religious practice, largely separated from agricultural necessity, rarely achieves. Summer arrives gradually rather than abruptly, its increasing heat changing work patterns and daily rhythms. As daylight extends to its annual maximum, working hours shift to avoid the day's most intense heat. Early morning sees significant activity, followed by reduced pace during midday, resuming as evening approaches with its cooler air. Modern people, working in temperature-controlled environments with schedules independent of natural light, have largely lost this seasonal adaptation of activity patterns. The medieval body knows when to work and when to rest through direct experience of environmental conditions. The medieval summer diet reflects both seasonal abundance and the continuing need to prepare for future scarcity. Fresh foods, vegetables from gardens, milk and cheese from livestock, feeding on rich pasture, occasional fish and meat, provide immediate nutrition. Simultaneously, preservation activities begin. Herbs are dried, fruits converted to preserves when possible, vegetables prepared for storage. Some of the abundance must be sold or traded to secure necessities the household cannot produce. This balance between present consumption and future provision creates a relationship with food entirely different from the modern expectation of perpetual availability. Heat brings its own challenges in buildings designed primarily for heat retention during cold months. Stone structures that provide welcome coolness during moderate temperatures become ovens during summer heat waves, absorbing and radiating warmth in ways that make upper floors nearly uninhabitable. Timber buildings with thatched roofs offer better summer ventilation, but increase fire risk during dry periods. Without fans, air conditioning, or refrigeration, the medieval person adapts to heat through behavior, seeking shade, reducing activity during hottest hours, using water features where available to create cooling effects through evaporation. Summer brings increased opportunity for travel and community gathering. Roads dried from spring mud allow easier movement between settlements. Longer daylight permits journeys to be completed within a single day that winter darkness would render dangerous or impossible. Markets become more frequent and abundant, offering greater variety of goods. Fairs draw people from wider areas, combining economic opportunity with social gathering, entertainment, and religious observance. These gatherings create opportunities for information exchange, potential marriage arrangements, and renewal of social bonds beyond the immediate community. The Feast of Midsummer, St. John's Day, near the summer solstice marks the year's longest daylight, with celebrations that acknowledge both Christian calendar and older recognition of solar cycles. Bonfires lit on hills create visible connections between communities, their light symbolic in multiple religious traditions. Herbs gathered on this day are believed to have enhanced medicinal properties, reflecting practical observation that many reach peak potency at this growth stage. The celebration's timing near the year's maximum light carries significance across cultural and religious frameworks, acknowledging human dependence on the sun's energy for survival. As summer reaches its fullest expression, agricultural communities begin the most labor-intensive period of the year, the harvest. Beginning with haymaking and continuing through grain harvest, this period demands maximum exertion from every able body. Work extends from earliest light until darkness prevents continuation, with brief breaks only for meals taken in the field rather than returning home. Modern mechanized agriculture has eliminated the enormous human labor force once required for successful harvest, changing not just work patterns, but entire community structures that evolved around this critical annual effort. The hay harvest comes first, typically in early summer, when grasses reach maximum nutrition before setting seed. This timing requires careful observation and judgment. Cut too early, the yield is reduced. Too late, and nutritional value diminishes. The process involves cutting with scythes, drying the cut grass, turning it repeatedly for even drying, gathering and storing it properly to prevent spoilage or combustion. This hay provides essential winter feed for livestock, making its successful harvest crucial for maintaining animals that provide draft power, milk, wool, and eventually meat. The urgency of proper haymaking cannot be overstated in the medieval agricultural system. As grain crops mature through summer, their harvest becomes the community's primary focus. Wheat, rye, barley, oats. The specific grains depend on regional conditions, but their successful collection represents the difference between survival and hunger in the coming year. This work creates distinctive sensory experiences. The whisper of breeze through ripe grain, the rhythmic swish of sickles or scythes, the unique smell of cut stalks, the feel of chaff against sweating skin, the taste of dust in the mouth. These sensations form annual memories that connect medieval communities to their specific place and time in ways modern food production rarely achieves. The wheat harvest carries particular significance, providing flour for bread that forms the foundation of medieval nutrition. Harvesting methods balance speed with care to minimize loss of precious grain. The sickle, curved and sharp, allows cutting with one hand while the other gathers the stalks, preserving the maximum amount of grain. Scythes permit faster cutting, but may scatter more grain unless used with great skill. Depending on region and available labor, different methods and tools evolve to address local conditions and crop types. This diversity of appropriate technology, adapted to specific circumstances, reflects medieval pragmatism rather than technological limitation. Harvest work creates unique social arrangements. The entire community participates according to ability, from young children gathering scattered stalks to the elderly preparing meals for workers, from the strongest adults cutting grain to older children binding sheaves. Social distinctions temporarily diminish in the shared urgency of the task. Even those normally excused from field labor due to status or specialized occupation may join in this communal effort upon which all depend. Payment often comes as a share of the harvest itself rather than currency, directly connecting labor to its product in ways modern wage relationships rarely match. Religious observances integrate with harvest activities, blessing both the work and its results. Prayers before beginning each day acknowledge divine influence over weather and yield. The first sheaf may receive special treatment or blessing. The final load brought from the field becomes occasion for celebration, marked with decorative treatment and communal recognition. These practices connect material labor with spiritual meaning, placing agricultural work within a cosmic framework that gives significance beyond mere production. The medieval harvest worker participates in both economic necessity and sacred activity simultaneously. Weather dominates consciousness during harvest with an intensity modern people rarely experience. A sudden storm can destroy in hours what has required months to grow and will be needed for a year's sustenance. This vulnerability creates both practical response systems, all available labor mobilized when rain threatens, night work by moonlight, if necessary, and spiritual practices designed to influence weather patterns through divine intercession. The complex relationship between human effort, natural conditions, and divine will shapes medieval understanding of harvest success or failure in ways modern technological buffers have largely eliminated. The completion of grain harvest brings lammas, loaf mass, celebrations, where bread made from the first newly harvested grain receives blessing. This moment of transition, when new flour replaces dwindling old stores, carries profound significance. The bread's quality reveals much about the harvest, how well the grain filled, how it responds to milling and baking, what the winter may bring in terms of nutrition. Modern consumers, purchasing standardized flour with consistent properties year-round, rarely experience this annual moment of assessment and transition, when the body begins to incorporate the new year's growth into itself. After grain harvest, attention turns to fruits, nuts, and late vegetables that provide essential variety and nutrition. Apples and pears, plums and cherries according to region, berries from cultivated and wild sources, hazelnuts and walnuts where available. All must be gathered at peak ripeness, consumed fresh when possible, preserved by drying or other methods, for future use. These foods provide crucial vitamins and variety in the winter diet, making their proper harvest and storage as important as grain, if less dramatic in scale. The autumn garden yields storage crops essential for winter nutrition. Cabbages, onions, root vegetables like turnips, carrots, and parsnips provide the basis for winter meals when fresh options disappear. Harvesting these at optimal maturity, neither too early nor too late, requires knowledge of both plant signs and weather patterns. Storage methods vary by crop type and local conditions. Some vegetables buried in sand, others hung in cool, dry spaces, still others converted immediately to preserved forms through fermentation or drying. This diversity of preservation approaches reflects both the different properties of various foods and the ingenious adaptations developed over generations to extend seasonal abundance. As autumn deepens, final preparations for winter accelerate. Firewood and other fuel sources must be fully secured, dried, and stored accessibly. Buildings receive repairs before winter weather makes work more difficult and creates additional strain on structures. Livestock are assessed, with decisions made about which animals can be maintained through winter and which must be slaughtered. Food preservation reaches its most intense phase, with smokehouses and salting vessels in constant use. These activities create distinctive autumn smells: wood smoke, meat preservation, fermenting vegetables, drying herbs, that signal the season as clearly as visual changes. The medieval autumn body continues the annual cycle of adaptation. Muscles strengthen through harvest work reach peak condition. Nutrition improves with abundant fresh food, storing energy for winter in the form of modest weight gain considered beneficial rather than problematic. Skin darkens from sun exposure during long outdoor work hours, offering protection that will fade during winter months. These physical adaptations connect the human body directly to seasonal cycles, creating an embodied relationship with time that modern climate-controlled environments and year-round food availability have largely eliminated. Michaelmas, September 29, marks a significant transition in the medieval year. This feast of St. Michael the Archangel coincides with several practical turning points: the completion of most harvest work, the beginning of autumn slaughtering, the due date for many rents and contracts, the start of university terms. Celebrations combine gratitude for successful harvest with preparation for the coming winter. The Michaelmas goose, traditionally eaten on this day, represents both festival food and practical reduction of flocks before winter feeding begins. This integration of religious observance, economic transactions, and seasonal transition typifies the medieval calendar's multi-dimensional significance. With main harvests completed, autumn brings the opportunity for activities requiring less immediate urgency, but significant for community function. Structures can be built or repaired while weather still permits. Longer-term projects like land clearing or drainage improvements become possible when daily survival tasks diminish. Markets and fairs reach their greatest abundance, allowing exchange of surplus for goods needed in the coming winter. Travel distances for trade extend before winter weather imposes limitations. These activities strengthen both physical infrastructure and social networks that support winter survival. The slaughtering season begins as temperatures drop, allowing meat preservation without risk of spoilage. This period brings distinctive activities to the community: the efficient butchering of animals, the careful allocation of different parts for various purposes, the deployment of preservation methods suited to each portion. Nothing is wasted. Organs consumed quickly as delicacies, blood used for sausage making, fat rendered for cooking and lighting, bones processed for tools, hides prepared for leather, even intestines cleaned for sausage casings. This complete utilization contrasts sharply with modern meat production's disconnection and waste. All Hallows, All Saints and All Souls Days, October 31st, November 2nd, creates a significant autumn observance, acknowledging the thinning boundary between living and dead as the natural world appears to die around the community. Earlier traditions regarding ancestor contact blend with Christian theology of prayer for departed souls. This period recognizes death not as a medical event isolated from normal experience, as in modern practice, but as part of the community's continuing existence across generations. The dead remain present in memory, prayer, and obligation, their wisdom and needs acknowledged as winter approaches. As autumn moves toward winter, daylight diminishes noticeably each day. Modern electricity has largely eliminated the psychological impact of this darkness, but for medieval communities, the encroaching night tangibly changes daily experience. Work hours contract, evening activities move indoors earlier, the precious resource of firelight becomes increasingly important. This darkness brings both practical challenges and opportunities for rest after harvest exertion. Bodies tired from months of intense labor begin the recovery process, so that winter's relative inactivity will continue. The first killing frost marks another seasonal transition, ending the growing season definitively. Any remaining fruits must be gathered immediately, tender plants covered or harvested regardless of maturity, preparations finalized for the dormant period ahead. This frost creates both urgency and release, the final push to secure winter, provisions followed by acceptance that the productive season has ended. The medieval relationship with these natural boundaries involves both practical response and philosophical acceptance of limits beyond human control. With Advent beginning 4 Sundays before Christmas, the wheel of the year approaches completion of its cycle. This period of spiritual preparation coincides with the final transition from autumn to winter. As external growth ceases and darkness reaches toward its maximum, religious practice turns toward themes of watchful waiting, of light, promised within darkness, of renewal that will eventually follow apparent death. These spiritual metaphors derive directly from natural cycles observed over countless generations, creating meaning that connects human experience with cosmic patterns. Throughout the seasonal round, medieval life demonstrates integration. Modern existence has largely separated. Work, worship, celebration, and survival intertwine rather than occupying separate compartments. The body moves through annual cycles of exertion, rest, nutrition, and adaptation, without artificial environments to maintain constant conditions. Community cohesion receives reinforcement through shared labor and celebration, timed to agricultural necessity rather than arbitrary scheduling. This integration creates a relationship with time fundamentally different from the standardized, mechanized, temporal experience of modern life. The rhythms of the medieval year reveal a society that understands itself as embedded within natural systems, rather than separate from or dominant over them. Weather, seasons, plant growth, animal behavior, these factors shape human activity rather than conform to human preference. Modern technology has created the illusion of independence from these patterns, allowing us to heat winter, cool summer, a light darkness, and access food independent of local growing conditions. The medieval person would find this apparent control both miraculous and perhaps troubling in its separation from natural order. Yet within these seasonal constraints, medieval communities created lives of meaning, pleasure, and purpose. The wheel of the year brought not just challenges, but celebrations, not merely work, but accomplishment, not only hardship, but beauty experienced through all senses. Seasonal foods arrived with intensity of flavor that year-round availability dilutes. Celebrations marked transitions with communal reinforcement modern individualism rarely achieves. Work connected directly to survival in ways modern employment often obscures, giving purpose to even difficult tasks. As we complete this annual cycle in imagination, we might recognize what has been gained through modern technology: the reduction of physical suffering, the increased certainty of food supply, the protection from environmental extremes, while also acknowledging what has been lost: the embodied relationship with natural cycles, the communal interdependence of seasonal work, the integrative experience of time as circular rather than linear. The medieval world would prove profoundly challenging to modern sensibilities with its physical demands and material limitations. Yet it might also offer insights into human relationship with time and nature that our separated, standardized experience has obscured. And so the wheel turns, from winter darkness through spring renewal, summer abundance, autumn harvest, and back to winter again. The medieval person moves through this cycle embedded within community and environment, experiencing time not as abstract units on a clock, but as changing light, temperature, growth, work, and celebration. Their calendar combines Christian observance with agricultural necessity. Their bodies adapt to seasonal demands. Their communities strengthen through shared labor and festival. As we drift towards sleep, we might imagine ourselves within this different relationship with time, more demanding in its physical requirements, perhaps, but also more connected to patterns that continue beneath the surface of our electronically illuminated, climate-controlled modern existence. Thank you for spending this quiet time with us, drifting through forgotten echoes of history. If this story brought you peace, please like, subscribe, and share it with someone who needs rest. We'd love to hear from you in the comments below. Until next time, sleep well, dream softly, and good night.